The old tractor had been sitting in that barn for years. Nobody touched it. Nobody wanted to. It was covered in dust and rust, like something time had forgotten on purpose. That poor single dad, Miguel Santos, 42 years old, walked to the tall grass toward that broken machine early one Tuesday morning in San Antonio, Texas. His boots were worn out, his jeans had a hole near the knee, and his toolbox felt heavier than usual that day. Miguel had been trying to find steady work for months. He knocked on doors, filled out applications, sat in waiting rooms where nobody called his name. People looked at him and saw the problem before they saw the man. Some said it straight to his face. "We don't hire guys with kids tagging along." His daughter, little Rosa, was 7 years old and already understood too much about struggle. Every night, Rosa would ask him the same thing before closing her eyes. "Poppy, are we going to be okay?" And Miguel would pull the blanket up to her chin and say the only honest thing he could. "I'm working on it, Mija." But working on it was getting harder. The rent was 3 weeks late. The refrigerator was almost empty. And Miguel had exactly one idea left. He had heard that a big ranch outside of town belonged to a woman named Elena Vega. Rich, serious, and known for keeping her gates closed tight. But there was a rusty old tractor sitting in her barn that nobody had touched in years. And Miguel Santos knew machines. Miguel didn't sleep much the night before. He sat at the small kitchen table in their one-bedroom apartment near the highway and stared at the wall. Rosa was asleep in the next room, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm like always. The apartment smelled like the tacos he made for dinner, because that's all they had left in the fridge. 2 tortillas and some beans. He opened his toolbox and checked everything inside. Every wrench, every piece of tape, every small part he had saved over the years from other jobs. He wasn't a man who threw things away, because he knew that what other people called trash was often the thing that saved you later. He made a decision right there at that table. He was going to walk onto that ranch before sunrise, find that old tractor, and fix it. Not because someone hired him, because he needed to prove something, not just to Elena Vega, but to himself. He needed to show the world that a man with grease on his hands and a child at home still had value. He wrote a small note and left it on Rosa's pillow so she wouldn't worry. "Poppy went to work early. Mrs. Carmen, next door, knows you're here. I love you more than tacos." Rosa would laugh at that. She always did. He grabbed his toolbox, stepped out into the cold Texas air, and started walking. 42 years old, broke, tired, and more determined than he had ever been in his entire life. The ranch was outside the city, about 4 miles from Miguel's apartment. He walked the whole way because his truck had broken down 2 weeks earlier, and he couldn't afford to fix it. The irony of that wasn't lost on him. A mechanic with a broken truck and a pocket full of nothing. He arrived when the sky was still dark purple, that quiet hour before the roosters start and before the world remembers it as problems. The main gate had a chain on it, but there was a gap in the fence near the old oak tree. Miguel didn't think of it as breaking in. He thought of it as finding a door that no one was using. He followed a dirt path through the field until he saw the barn. Big, old, with wood that had turned gray from years of sun and rain. The door wasn't locked. He pushed it open slowly, and the smell of oil and hay hit him like a memory. His grandfather had a barn just like this one back in Mexico. When Miguel was a boy, he stood still for a moment, just breathing. Then he saw it. The tractor. It was a heavy old machine, green under all that rust, with cracked rubber on the tires and a hood that sat crooked. Most people would have walked away. Miguel walked toward it. He set his toolbox down on the dirt floor, pulled out his flashlight, and got to his knees like a man beginning a prayer. He was ready. Whatever this machine needed, he would give it. Miguel worked quietly in that barn for almost 2 hours before he even tried to start the engine. He didn't rush. He learned long ago that rushing a broken machine is like yelling at a scared dog. You only make things worse. So he took his time. He checked every wire, every hose, every filter. He cleaned what was dirty. He tightened what was loose. He replaced a small part near the fuel line, using a piece he found in an old box in the corner of the barn, underneath a torn feed bag. His hands turned black with grease quickly, but that didn't bother him. Grease on your hands means you're doing real work. That's what his father used to say. And right now, real work was the only prayer Miguel had left. While he worked, he thought about Rosa, the way she looked when she was sleeping. So peaceful, so unaware of how hard things were. She deserved better than a cold apartment and beans for dinner. She deserved a yard to run in, a school where she felt safe, a father who came home with something more than apologies. He wasn't going to fail her. That was not something he was willing to accept. After a long while, he adjusted the last connection, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked at the old machine with quiet respect. "Okay," he said softly, like he was talking to a living thing. "Let's see what you've got." He turned the key. The engine coughed once, then twice. Then it caught. That engine sound cut through the morning air like a church bell. Low at first, rough and uncertain, like an old man clearing his throat after years of silence. Then deeper, fuller, steadier. The whole barn shook just a little, and Miguel felt in his chest like a second heartbeat. He stayed kneeling on the ground for a moment, not moving. His eyes were wet. He hadn't expected that. He thought he was too tired to feel anything big, but that sound broke something open inside him, because it wasn't just a tractor starting. It was proof. Proof that broken things could work again. Proof that patience and skill meant something. Proof that a man who had nothing but his hands and his knowledge could still change something real in the world. He was still on his knees when the barn door flew open, and a voice hit him like cold water. "Who is in my barn?" The woman standing in the doorway was Elena Vega, 51 years old, dressed sharp even this early, hair pulled back, eyes hard as river stones. She had heard the engine from the main house and came out fast. She was not the kind of woman who waited to understand the situation. She walked toward it. Miguel stood up slowly. He didn't run. Running would have looked like guilt. He turned to face her with the wrench still in his hand and his face covered in grease. He said the only honest thing that made sense. "Ma'am, I know I had no right to come in here, but I just wanted to show you what I can do." Elena Vega did not speak right away. She looked at Miguel, then at the tractor, then back at Miguel. The engine was still running, rough but real. A machine that had been silent for years was now breathing again. She could feel the vibration in her boots. "Prove yourself to who?" she asked, her voice tight and controlled. Miguel held her gaze. He wasn't going to look at the floor. He had looked at the floor too many times in his life, and it never helped. "To you, ma'am. To anyone who will still hire a man who shows up with a daughter. Nobody wants that. They say I'm the problem. But I'm not the problem. I know how to work. I know how to fix things. And I just fix that." He pointed at the tractor without looking at it. His eyes stayed on Elena. She crossed her arms. "You trespassed on my property and you want a reward?" "No, ma'am. I want 5 minutes of your time. Just 5. Look at what I did. Look at how I did it. Then decide." Elena walked slowly around the tractor. She ran her hand across the hood. She leaned down and looked at the engine. She was quiet for a long time. In the ranch world, a tractor like this one sitting dead in the barn was not just machine. It was a loss, a cost, a problem nobody had solved. Until this morning. She looked at him again, different this time. Not softer, but real. "What's your name?" "Miguel Santos, ma'am." "Why this tractor, Miguel?" Miguel paused before answering. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because the real answer was the kind of thing that made a man feel exposed. He breathed once and told the truth. "Because my grandfather had one just like it. Back in Sonora, when I was a kid, he used to let me hand him tools while he worked. I learned everything I know watching him. When I saw this one sitting here, I thought, maybe if I can make this run again, maybe I can make my own life run again too." Elena looked at him for a long second. Then she let out a short, dry laugh. Not mean, just surprised, like someone who hadn't expected honesty to show up in her barn before sunrise. "You have a daughter," she said. It wasn't a question. Word travels in small towns. "Yes, ma'am. Rosa, 7 years old. She's with a neighbor right now." Elena walked to the barn door and looked out at the fields. The sun was starting to come up over the east pasture, painting everything gold and orange. Miguel waited. He was good at waiting. He had been waiting his whole life. "My east irrigation system is failing," Elena said finally, still looking outside. Pipes leaking, old pump, pressure dropping every week. My foreman says it's too much work. He just leaves it. Miguel didn't say anything. He just listened. Elena turned to face him. 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to show me you're worth keeping around. If you fix what needs fixing, we talk about something real. She paused. And next time, you knock on the front door. Miguel walked back to his apartment that morning feeling like the ground was different under his feet. Not lighter, more solid, like something real was waiting for him, instead of just more closed doors. Rosa was already awake when he came in, sitting at the table eating cereal with Mrs. Carmen from next door, watching her. Rosa looked up and saw the grease on his hands and the look on his face, and she jumped off the chair. "Poppy, did you get work?" He picked her up and held her tight. She smelled like milk and shampoo. "I got a chance, Mija. That's better than work." Rosa pulled back and looked at his face with those serious eyes she got when she was thinking hard. "Is the lady nice?" Miguel laughed. "She's honest. That's better than nice." Rosa thought about that for a moment, then nodded like it made perfect sense. Mrs. Carmen, 68 years old and the kind of neighbor everyone hopes to have, patted Miguel on the arm. "Go eat something. You look like you ran a marathon." He sat down and ate the last of the beans. He was already thinking about the East irrigation system. Old pumps, he understood. Leaking pipes he had fixed 100 times. The problem wasn't the work. The problem was going to be Elena's foreman. A man like that, who had been running things his own way for years, doesn't welcome someone new walking in with solutions. But Miguel had learned something important a long time ago. You can't let other people's comfort stop you from doing what needs to be done. The foreman's name was Don Rubin, 64 years old, built like an old oak post, with a permanent squint and the kind of hands that had done hard work for decades. He met Miguel at the gate the next morning with his arms already crossed. "So you're the one," Don Rubin said. Not a greeting, a statement. "Miguel Santos. I'm here to look at the East irrigation." Don Rubin walked ahead without responding, which Miguel took as permission to follow. They moved across the north field in silence until they reached the pump station. Pipes everywhere, old metal couplings rusted together, a motor that rattled every few seconds like it was warning you before it quit entirely. "The old mechanic tried to fix it twice," Don Rubin said, finally speaking. "Made it worse both times." Miguel didn't comment on that. He crouched down and put his ear against the main pipe. Don Rubin watched like he was waiting for the punchline of a joke. "The leak is before the curve," Miguel said quietly, almost himself. Don Rubin snorted. "You figured that out with your ear?" Miguel looked up calm. "With my ear and with my life. Water has a sound. When it wants to escape, it tells you." He stood up and opened his toolbox. "Give me 10 minutes. If I'm wrong, you can laugh the rest of the day." Don Rubin crossed his arms tighter, but he stayed. And something about that felt important. Miguel had noticed that the people who stay to watch are the ones who are still hoping. Miguel worked fast but careful. He found the weak point in the coupling, pulled the corroded section apart with steady hands, and cleaned the rust off the inside edge. Then he reached into his toolbox and pulled out a fitting from an older model, one he had saved years ago from a job that no one else thought was worth keeping. Don Rubin took one step forward. "Where did you get that piece?" "From your storage room. Behind a torn bag of feed, in the back corner. Nobody looks back there." Don Rubin was quiet for a moment. "That's from a 30-year-old model." "It fits," Miguel said simply. "Sometimes the old things are exactly what the broken new things need." He sealed the connection, wrapped it tight, and turned to the pressure valve. "Turn it on," he told Don Rubin. The old foreman hesitated, then reached over and opened the valve. They both watched. The pipes hummed. The motor stopped rattling. And water began to move through the East system with a pressure that hadn't been felt in months. Strong and steady and real. Don Rubin stood there without speaking. Miguel cleaned his hands and waited. "That's not a miracle," Miguel said finally. "That's just patience and care." Don Rubin looked at him sideways, like a man who wanted to stay skeptical but couldn't find a reason anymore. He said nothing, but he nodded once. And out on that ranch, A nod from Don Rubin was worth more than most people's speeches. Elena came out to the east field that afternoon. She told herself she was just checking on things. She told herself she wasn't hoping for anything specific, but she walked faster than usual across the pasture, and when she saw water running where there had been dry ground for months, she stopped and let herself feel it for just one moment before putting her face back together. Don Rubin met her near the pump station. He fixed 3 leaks, he said, holding the workboard. 3 leaks in the pump motor. He paused, like the next part cost him something. He's good. Elena looked across the field and found Miguel in the distance, still working, shirt damp with sweat, tool belt catching the afternoon light. There was something in the way he carried himself. Not arrogant, not desperate, just present, like a man who knew exactly where he was supposed to be. He stays, Elena said. Don Rubin looked at her. He's stubborn. Good, she said, and she meant it. What she didn't say, what she kept to herself as she walked back toward the house, was that watching Miguel work reminded her of her father, the way he moved around machines like they were conversations instead of objects, the way he listened before he acted. Her father had built this ranch with that kind of patience. And slowly, piece by piece, Elena had watched it start to fall apart. Not from one big disaster, from 1,000 small surrenders. Maybe this man with grease on his hands and a 7-year-old daughter was the beginning of something she wasn't ready to name yet. That evening, Miguel picked up Rosa from Mrs. Carmen's and found something he hadn't expected. Elena was standing outside the main house near the porch steps. She had asked Don Rubin where Rosa would be, and she waited. When Rosa saw her, the little girl slowed down and tightened her grip on Miguel's hand. Elena crouched down eye level, no pretense. So you're Rosa? Rosa nodded, half hiding behind her father's leg. I'm Elena. Do you like animals? Rosa's eyes got a little bigger. I love animals. Elena almost smiled. Then you got work to do. There are chickens, a goat, 2 horses, and a stubborn little donkey who is only friendly with people who respect him. She tilted her head. Think you can handle that? Rosa looked up at Miguel. He gave her a small nod. She looked back at Elena. I can handle it. Elena stood up and looked at Miguel. If you need to bring her, bring her. I don't want that to be a reason anyone uses against you here. She stays close to someone at all times. Agreed? Miguel felt something catch in his chest. He had been told so many times that Rosa was a problem, that a man with a child was a liability, that he needed to figure out childcare before he could be considered a real worker. And here was this hard, serious woman removing that obstacle without being asked. Agreed, he said. Thank you. Elena gave him a short look. Don't thank me yet. You're still in the first week. But Rosa had already grabbed Elena's hand. And that said everything. Those first 2 weeks passed like a season compressed into days. Miguel arrived before sunrise every morning and stayed until the light was gone. He fixed the irrigation pump, then the north fence line, then a generator that had been sitting broken in the equipment shed for over a year. He didn't ask for instructions. He looked, listened, thought, and worked. Don Rubin watched everything with the eyes of a man who had been disappointed before and wasn't ready to stop expecting it. But slowly, the complaints stopped coming, and then something rarer happened. Don Rubin started asking Miguel's opinion before making decisions, not out loud, not formally, just a look across the yard that said, "What do you think?" Rosa spent her days near the barn, talking to the animals like they were old friends. She named the donkey Toro, even though he wasn't a bull, and she decided the oldest hen was called Abuela Carmen, after Mrs. Carmen from back home. Elena would pass by during the day and find Rosa whispering stories to Toro's ear or carefully gathering eggs with both hands like she was carrying something precious. One afternoon, Elena stopped and watched her for a long time without saying anything. Rosa noticed and looked up. Toro only bites people who are nervous, Rosa explained seriously. I told him I wasn't nervous. So we're friends now. Elena said, that's a good strategy for most things in life. Rosa thought about it. My poppy uses it with broken machines. Elena walked away before Rosa could see her face do something she wasn't ready to explain. Late one Thursday evening, Elena sat alone in her office, surrounded by papers, bank statements, Debt notices, tax records, loan documents with red numbers circled in ink. The ranch had been bleeding money slowly for years, not from one bad decision, but from many small ones. Hired the wrong people, trusted the wrong advisors, ignored the signs until signs became emergencies. She opened one envelope and read the numbers inside. The amount owed was large. The deadline was soon. She set the paper face down on the desk and pressed her hands flat against it like she was trying to hold the problem still. She had built a wall around this information for a long time. Nobody on the ranch knew how close things were to the edge. She was raised to believe that showing financial weakness was the same as handing someone a weapon, so she carried it alone. Her phone rang. She already knew who it was before she answered. "Helena, sweetheart," the voice said, smooth and rehearsed. It was Victor Caldwell, a businessman from Austin who had been circling for 2 years, always appearing at exactly the wrong moment, which meant he had people watching. "I heard about your situation," Victor said. "I just want to help." Elena gripped the phone tight. "Where did you hear anything?" He laughed low. "Banks talk. Accountants talk. People talk. I just listen." He paused. "Have dinner with me. No pressure. Let's talk about your future." Elena hung up before she made a promise. But she sat in the dark for a long time after that, because she knew Victor wasn't wrong about one thing. Time was running out. The next morning, Miguel noticed something was different. Elena moved through the ranch with the same strong posture as always, but there was a tightness around her eyes and a silence that felt heavy. He recognized that look. He had worn it himself many times. It was the look of a person holding a weight they haven't told anyone about yet. He finished fixing a broken water valve near the main barn and then walked toward the house to leave his daily work notes on the porch table, as Elena had asked him to do. The office door was slightly open. He could see her sitting at her desk, still and pale, staring at something in her hands. He knocked softly on the doorframe. "I can come back." Elena looked up. For just a second, the wall came down. Then it went back up, but not all the way. "Come in." He stepped in and set the notes on the corner of the desk. He looked at her the way you look at someone when you're not pretending you don't see them struggling. "Elena, you look like you've been carrying a building all night." She almost laughed. "Almost. It's just work." "No," he said simply. "That's not just work. I know that face. It's the face of someone trying not to fall apart." She looked at him for a long moment, deciding something. Then she pushed the papers toward him slightly, not handing them over, just showing them. The numbers, the dates, the totals. "The ranch is in trouble," she said. "Real trouble. Not the kind that fixes with irrigation repairs." Miguel looked at the numbers without pretending he understood every detail of high finance, but he understood enough. Late payments, penalty interest, a loan maturity date circled in red. He set the pages back down carefully. "What happens if you don't find the money in time?" he asked. "I lose the land," Elena said flatly. "The bank takes the property and sells it. And if I lose the land, I lose everything my father built, everything I've spent my life protecting." Miguel was quiet. He didn't rush to say something comforting. He sat in the silence with her for a moment, which is sometimes the most respectful thing you can do. "What's the option you hate?" he asked. Elena looked at him sideways. "Victor Caldwell. He wants to come in as a partner. Wants to marry me. Says he'll clear the debt and keep the ranch name." She said it like it tasted bad. "He calls it solution. I call it purchase." Miguel felt something move in his chest that was more than just concern for a person he worked for. He kept his voice steady. "What does he want in return?" "Control," Elena said. "The kind that doesn't show up in contracts. The kind that just slowly takes over until you realize you're a guest in your own life." Miguel looked out the window at the fields, at the fixed fences, at the water running in the east pasture, at the things that were better now because someone cared enough to show up. "There has to be another way," he said, not as a promise, as a belief. That night, Rosa was sitting on the edge of her cot eating crackers when she noticed Miguel staring at the ceiling. She put down her crackers and crawled over to him with a serious face she wore when she had something important to say. "Papi, are you sad?" "Thinking," he said. "About the ranch?" He looked at her, 7 years old, and she already understood the shape of problems, even when she didn't know the details. A little bit, he admitted. Rosa pulled her knees to her chest. When I can't open a jar, I call you. When you can't fix something alone, you have to call someone too. She paused. You should call Senora Elena. You're a team. Miguel felt that sentence go straight through him like an arrow. It's more complicated than a jar, Mija. I know, Rosa said seriously, but teams don't leave each other alone with the hard parts. He turned the light off after she fell asleep and lay there thinking. He wasn't a businessman. He didn't have money to invest. He didn't have connections or credit or anything that solved the kind of problem Elena was facing. What he had was his hands, his mind, and the stubborn belief that you could build something real without selling your soul to do it. He had an idea forming. Small, honest, maybe not enough, but real. And sometimes real is the only thing that lasts. He fell asleep with the idea still taking shape. The way a broken machine starts to make sense when you stop forcing it and just let your hands remember what they know. 2 days later, Victor Caldwell arrived at the ranch without being invited. His car was too clean for the dirt road, his shoes too polished for the yard, and his smile too practiced to mean anything good. The workers slowed down to look. Don Rubin went rigid the moment he saw the car. Elena came down the porch steps with her shoulders back and her face closed. Miguel watched from near the barn, where he was sorting materials for the repairs. He didn't move closer. He waited. Victor opened his arms like he was arriving at his own property. Elena, good to see you. I came to talk sense. You came without being asked, she said. Victor waved that away like it was nothing. This is what friends do when they care. He looked around the yard. His eyes landed on Miguel. He studied him for a moment with a look that was part curiosity and part contempt. So that's the mechanic. He works here, Elena said. Her voice was low and very precise. Victor lowered his voice like he was being generous. Helena, I have a real offer for you. I'll clear your debts completely. You keep the name, the house, the reputation. We get married, I come in as full partner, and this place doesn't go under. Simple. He paused. Or you keep playing ranch with someone who can't even buy his daughter a decent pair of shoes. Elena's jaw tightened. Miguel had taken 2 steps forward before he caught himself and stopped. This was not his moment to speak. Not yet. But every word Victor said was landing on him like stones. Miguel had held himself still for as long as he could. Elena's eyes were steady. Her posture hadn't broken, but he could see the effort it was costing her. Victor kept talking, polished and smooth, like a man who had rehearsed his speech 100 times in front of a mirror. You're choosing struggle because of sentiment, Victor said. That's admirable in a song, not in business. Miguel walked forward, calm and slow. He stopped a few feet away and spoke without raising his voice. Money doesn't buy a person's soul. Victor turned to look at him slowly, like he was noticing furniture that had started talking. Excuse me? Miguel kept his eyes level. You heard me. This ranch might be in debt, but Senora Elena is not for sale. Victor let out a short, patronizing laugh. Be careful, mechanic. You're overstepping. Miguel didn't move back. I'm just stating the truth. There are things that can't be fixed with a checkbook, and there are things that should never be sold no matter how much pressure you apply. Elena felt the air change around her, not because someone was fighting for her, but because someone was saying out loud the things she had been telling herself in private for weeks, that she had value beyond the debt, that her life was not a transaction. Victor looked at them both with the eyes of a man recalculating. You have until tomorrow, he said to Elena, then walked back to his car. Clean shoes, clean car, and absolutely nothing clean about the offer he just made. That night, the sky closed in dark and fast. Arnaldo, the old hand who had been on the ranch longer than anyone, came in from a north pasture, looking up at the clouds with the expression of a man who had seen this before and didn't like the memory. Storm coming, he said. Bad one. He was right. By 9 o'clock the wind was shaking the fences, and by 10 the first thunder cracked so loud that lights flickered throughout the ranch. Workers scrambled to tie down equipment, move animals, cover anything exposed. Rain came in like it had been holding back for months and was now done being patient. Miguel was already in the yard before anyone called him, helping load tools into the covered shed, checking the barn door latches, moving feed bags off the wet ground. The rain hit his face and soaked through his shirt in seconds, but he kept moving. Around him, people worked faster because he worked faster. Then someone shouted from near the old barn. A tree branch had cracked in the wind, heavy and falling. It was falling toward Elena. Miguel didn't think. He ran. He reached her before anyone else did, grabbed her by the shoulders, and pushed her sideways hard. They both hit the mud together. The branch crashed down 2 feet from where she had been standing, shaking the ground like a fist. For a moment, nothing moved. The rain kept falling. They were face to face in the mud, breathing hard. Elena's eyes were wide open. Miguel's hand was still on her shoulder. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. She shook her head slowly, but neither of them moved right away. They helped each other up and went straight back into the chaos of the storm, because that's what the moment required. But something had shifted between them, something small and enormous at the same time, and they both felt it even while their hands were busy doing other things. Miguel organized the workers without being asked, pulling boards, tying rope around the weakest part of the old barn roof, improvising supports with what was available in the equipment shed. Don Rubin, who had been running this ranch for 20 years, watched Miguel work the crowd and found himself following instead of leading for the first time he could remember. Elena didn't go inside to stay safe. She was in the mud with them, holding a lantern, carrying a crate, asking people if they were okay. Don Rubin saw her and recognized something that had been gone for a long time. The woman who used to be present. The daughter of the man who built this place. Not the administrator behind glass. The person who cared about the land the same way the land cared back. When the worst of the wind passed and everyone moved to main shelter, Miguel stayed by Elena's side without making it obvious. He just happened to be near her when she looked uncertain. He just happened to know where the dry blankets were kept. He put one over her shoulders without asking. "Put it on." "What about you?" "I manage." He sat close. Not too close, but close enough that the cold stopped mattering for both of them. And outside, the storm continued its conversation with the roof. The ranch house lost power completely, and the only light came from old oil lamps Elena found in the pantry closet. She and Miguel sat near the window in the front room while the storm pushed against the glass. The workers had settled in the main barn shelter. It was just the two of them in the quiet of the storm. Elena held a cold cup of coffee and stared at a spot on the wooden floor. Miguel watched the flame in the lamp flicker. "If I accept Victor's offer," she said, not looking up. "I solve everything at once." "And what do you lose?" he asked, keeping his voice low. She let out a short, humorless sound. "Everything I built on my own. The feeling that this is mine. That I made decisions that mattered." Miguel turned toward her a little. "You lose yourself. And that's worse than losing the land." She looked at him. Her eyes were honest in a way that her face usually didn't allow. "I'm scared, Miguel." He held her gaze. "Me too. I'm scared of watching you sell yourself to someone who only sees numbers. And I'm scared of being a man who can't do enough to change that. Those two things are fighting in my chest right now." Elena shook her head hard, almost frustrated. "Don't say you're not enough. He has money, but he has nothing real inside him. Nothing here." She pressed her hand to her chest. The gesture was small and completely unguarded. Miguel looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Then, don't let him buy what he doesn't deserve. This is the kind of story that Addictive Stories was made to carry. Not because it's about a rich ranch or a man who can fix engines, but because it's about two people standing at the edge of something real, scared to step forward, more scared to step back. The storm outside kept going. The lamp kept burning. And Miguel said the most honest thing he had said since arriving at the ranch. "If you want to fight for this place the right way, I'll fight with you. Not by selling your freedom. Not by signing a marriage contract that looks like rescue, but is actually a cage. We find another way. Maybe we don't have all the answers tonight, but we look for them together." Elena stared at him for a long time. "What if we fail?" He didn't dress it up. "Then we fall trying, but we fall whole. not broken in half by someone else's terms. The rain began to soften, not stop, just soften, like the world outside was also choosing to breathe for a moment. Elena reached over, and her hand touched his without either of them planning it. It was a small thing, a touch, just the side of her hand against the back of his. But both of them went still the way you go still when something matters. Neither pulled away. They sat like that while the lamp burned low and the storm finished saying what it needed to say. And by the time morning started to show at the window's edge, something had been decided, not with words, with presence, with the simple fact that neither of them had left. Morning came gray and wet. The ranch covered in the aftermath of the night. A section of the old barn roof had caved in. Fence posts were down in the south field. The ground near the pump station was flooded again. Elena looked at the damage on the porch and felt the old fear try to rise. More cost, more debt, more distance between where she was and where the bank needed her to be. The woman she had been 6 months ago would have already been on the phone, calling for a loan, or calling Victor. But then she saw Miguel and Don Rubin in the yard, already walking the perimeter, already pointing and measuring and dividing the work. Two men who had disagreed about everything for 2 weeks were now standing together, looking at the same problem from the same side. Don Rubin came to her with his clipboard and the expression of a man delivering hard news. "The damage is real, Senora Elena. It's going to cost something." "I know." He looked at her directly, then looked at Miguel, then back at her. His voice dropped to something private. "Just don't you go accepting any rescue from a man in a suit. Those ones say with one hand and take with both." Elena felt the words land exactly where they were meant to. She straightened her shoulders. "I won't." Miguel, a few feet away, heard and glanced at her. She met his eyes and said clearly, "I'm not marrying for debt. We solved this the right way." And saying it out loud, with the ruined barn behind her and the mud on her boots, made it the realest decision she had ever made. Victor called that morning. Elena put the phone on speaker, without meaning to, and Miguel heard everything. Victor's voice was polished and patient. "I heard about the storm. More damage, more cost. You're watching this place fall apart in real time. Helena." Elena's hand tightened around the phone. "I'm watching survive." "Sentiment," he said, with a tone that made the words sound like stupidity. "I'm giving you until end of business today. After that, my offer disappears." Elena looked at Miguel, not for permission, for something harder to name, like confirmation that what she already knew was worth saying out loud. She looked back at the phone. "Victor, my answer is no. Not maybe, not after more thought. No." Her voice was level and final. "And I'd appreciate you not coming to my property again without being invited." She hung up. The room was quiet. "Are you sure?" Miguel asked after a moment. "I'm afraid," she said. "But yes, I'm sure." She looked at him. "I've been protecting a life that wasn't really mine for a long time. I ran this ranch from a distance, behind papers and phone calls, and I lost the feel of it. You brought that back. Rosa brought that back." She exhaled. "I'm not giving that up for a man who thinks fear is a tool." Miguel nodded slowly. "Then we figure out the rest." "Together," she said, and that one word, said plainly in a muddy ranch house after a storm, carried more weight than any contract Victor could have drafted. Miguel had been turning an idea over in his mind for days. The way you turn a bolt that's stuck, patient and steady until it finally moves. He brought it up during a work meeting. Don Rubin and Elena at the table with a list of repairs and costs that made the room feel smaller. Miguel set down his coffee and said, "I want to suggest something different." Don Rubin raised one eyebrow, but didn't speak. Miguel continued, "This ranch has history. It has land, animals, real food, old machines with stories. People in cities pay real money to spend a weekend away from all that noise. They want to see chickens. They want to feed a donkey. They want to eat eggs they collected themselves and drink coffee on a real porch." Elena was listening with her full attention now. "If we fix up the small cottage by the orchard and set up guided visits, we create income without selling anything. We also sell direct. Cheese, eggs, honey, vegetables. No middleman. Clean money coming in." Don Rubin made a doubtful sound. Rural tourism. It works, Miguel said. If it's real, and this place is real. Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she looked out the window at the land, at the water running in the east pasture, at the repaired fence line, at the old barn they were slowly bringing back, at everything that was better now than it had been 6 weeks ago. We're doing it, she said, and the room felt different, not lighter, more alive, like a machine that just turned over for the first time after years of silence. The little cottage near the orchard had good bones. That was the first thing Miguel said when he walked through it. With Elena, the wood was solid. The floor was level. The windows still fit their frames. It smelled like old cedar and years of forgetting. But underneath, all that was still a good room. My father used it during harvest season, Elena said, running her hand along the wall. He said working people deserve a decent place to sleep. Miguel knocked on a wall and listened. It talks back. That's a good sign. He walked the perimeter slowly. We're not making it fancy. We make it honest. Clean, warm, real. The kind of place that feels like something. Rosa appeared in the doorway, mochila on her back, eyes wide with the professional curiosity of a 7-year-old real estate inspector. What's this going to be? Elena crouched down. A place where people come to visit the ranch and feel part of something real. Rosa's eyes lit up. Like a guest house? Exactly like that. I could be the animal guide. Rosa announced. I'll tell him about every single one. Toro's whole life story. Abuela Carmen's habits. All of it. She was already planning the tour in her head. Miguel looked at Elena over Rosa's head, and there was a softness in his face that he didn't try to hide. Elena looked back at him, and she didn't look away. That's your job then, Rosa, Elena said. Official animal ambassador. Rosa stood up straight with the dignity of someone who had just been given an important title. I accept. The first test weekend arrived faster than any of them expected. A family from San Antonio came on a recommendation of Dona Alma, the oldest neighbor in the area, a woman of 78 who said very few words and meant every one. The cottage smelled like fresh paint and cedar. The bed was made with clean quilts. A handwritten card from Elena sat on the table. Welcome. This is real life. We're glad you're here. Rosa was at the gate when the family arrived, backpack on, completely prepared. First, I'll show you the chickens, she began, leading them like she had been doing this for years. Then Toro, then the orchard, then the big barn where my papi fixed the old tractor. He can fix anything. Miguel stood nearby and laughed quietly, a small laugh that came from somewhere deep and honest. Elena watched from a short distance. She saw the child leading strangers through her family's land like it was the most natural thing in the world. She saw the family following, relaxed and smiling, children running toward the animals without being told to. She heard the ranch making sounds it hadn't made in years. Full living sounds. At the end of the day, the father came to Elena and said, "There's something true about this place." Elena held herself together until he turned away. Then she pressed her lips together and breathed carefully, the way you breathe when you are afraid to let the feeling get too big. Miguel passed by and said quietly, "It's not a miracle, it's a seed." Elena whispered back, "Then we keep planting." Victor came back one last time. He arrived in the middle of the second open weekend, when the ranch had guests walking the grounds. Rosa had given her tour with full confidence, Don Rubin grilling at the outdoor table, and the whole place humming with something that couldn't be faked. He stepped out of his car and looked around like a man who had arrived at a party he wasn't invited to but expected to own. He found Elena on the front porch and spoke loud enough for people nearby to hear. "I'm giving you one final chance to save this place from turning into a hobby." Elena stood up slowly. "This isn't a hobby. This is a plan." He stepped closer. "Jelly and tourism don't pay the bank, Elena." It was Rosa who stopped a moment. She came around the corner of the porch with mud on her boots and a look on her face that was completely unafraid. She stood between them and looked up at Victor with clear eyes. "Mister, stop talking to Senora Elena like that." Victor looked down at her with the mild irritation of someone who considers children irrelevant. "Go play, little girl." Rosa didn't move. "She's not going to marry you. She doesn't need to. She has us. Rosa's voice didn't shake at all. My papi works every single day until his hands hurt. And Senora Elena smiles for real now. Before she was sad. I could see it. I don't want her to be sad again. I don't want to lose my family. The porch went completely quiet. Victor had no answer for that. Not one that would have worked on anyone watching. Elena picked Rosa up and held her close. And the words came out before she could stop them. Said loud enough that everyone nearby could hear. She's right. I already have a family. Miguel stepped up to the porch and stood beside them. Not aggressive. Not performing. Just present. Victor looked at the three of them, and then at the people around the yard who had stopped to watch. He understood. This moment was not winnable for him. He put the envelope back in his jacket, adjusted his coat, and walked to his car with the careful dignity of a man who is lost but refuses to say so. When the car disappeared down the dirt road, something in the air changed. Lighter, cleaner. People started clapping. Not a performance, just recognition. The sound of people seeing courage and choosing to acknowledge it. That night, after the guests left and Rosa was asleep in the cottage with Elena's old quilt pulled up to her chin, Miguel and Elena sat on the porch steps in the quiet. I don't have anything to promise you, Miguel said. No money, no big plan, just work. Elena looked at him steadily. I don't want promises that shine. I want someone who stays. He reached over and held her hand, not dramatically. Just held it, and she let him. I don't know how tomorrow looks, she said. He answered, it looks like us, together. And this time she believed it, not because it was beautiful, because it was true. In the weeks that followed, the ranch turned from a place of fear into a place of direction. Reservations came in steadily. Direct sales grew. The community started talking about the Vega Ranch not as a fading legacy, but as something we're visiting, we're supporting. The bank, seeing real numbers coming in, agreed to renegotiate the debt. Don Rubin stopped resisting the new and became the one who protected it. Miguel took over the full coordination of all machinery and maintenance, and Elena brought him into decisions openly, sitting at the same table, looking at the same papers. Rosa grew up inside all of it, walking between the barn and the cottage and the orchard and the porch like the whole ranch was her world. Because it was... She learned the names of plants from Elena and the names of engine parts from her father, and she understood, without anyone explaining it, that family is not something you're born into alone. It's something you choose and then keep choosing every day. This story from Addictive Stories is not really about a tractor or a debt or a businessman who thought he could buy what wasn't for sale. It's about that moment when life backs you into a corner and whispers a question that matters most. Are you going to choose the safe thing or the true thing? Maybe you have a tractor in your life too. A dream you parked in the corner because the timing felt wrong. A door you stopped knocking on. A person you were afraid to choose. Maybe today is the day you walk into that barn, get on your knees, and see if there's still something worth starting. Some engines just need someone who believes they're worth fixing.